Hello, good afternoon, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of exciting racing action in the middle of the pack. Racing League Fall Into PCUP Championship for 2025 has brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform, available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, folks, we are back for another round of intense racing action, but what a round we have in store, because we're being round 4 of 8. That means we're at the end of the first half of the season, and come the end of today, we will be crowning provisionally our Cup champions in the middle of the pack Racing League Cup. Because of the first 4 rounds, our drivers will be competing not only in the overall Drivers' Championships, whether they be Pro or Am, but also in the first of our 2 Cups, and we settle everything today for that first Cup here in the US of A. But where exactly are we in the United States of America, I hear you ask? We are in downtown Long Beach in the US state of California, and it is the Long Beach Street Circuit that we playing host to our drivers. Originally envisaged as the Long Beach Street Circuit all the way back in 1975, this venue has gone through a multitude of names over the course of its extensive history. The best part of 50 years of motorsport taking place here, in fact, and the circuit has gone through very little revision over that time, and it's currently known, of course, as the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, in reference to the annual visit by none other than IMSA, where we do see GT3 machines as well as prototypes go roaring around its tarmac. Only 1.96 miles in length and consisting of an absolute clustering of corners, this is a circuit the walls loom large, overtaking opportunities are limited, but also on top of that, the fact those braking zones, well, they really require you to be bold or wait your turn for the next opportunity, but by the time you get to that finish line, you may have already wasted all your time and not had a chance to go for the move. So qualifying is going to be just as important as racing, but there's only one slight problem, because as we head into this round, well, of course, it's a feature race finale for the end of the Cup. There's no qualifying session, and how the grid's going to be set, we'll come on to that in due course. But where are my manners? I haven't welcomed you all live to this broadcast from circuit side. Indeed, you're tuning in right now live via one or two media platforms, your viewing pleasure, and you could be tuning in alongside the likes of none other than Little Regret, also known as Blake Phillips, who says welcome to the West Coast, and welcome to you, Blake. I hope you're doing well. You can be joining Blake, ladies and gentlemen, in the YouTube chat at youtube.com and search for TX11TX Alternative Paul Walsh, and that's where you can be tuning in. Hello to you there in the YouTube. Meanwhile, you also do have available, if you're more of a Twitch TV person, you can go to twitch.tv/TX11 and you'll be tuning in via Twitch. And hello to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch as well. And this broadcast, of course, a post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure. So the racing itself isn't actually live. It occurred early this week on Wednesday, the 22nd of October 2025, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live today on this Saturday afternoon on the 25th of October. Therefore, in the commentary booth, we do not know who currently is the fastest in this practice session until it all unfolds, nor do we know how our drivers get on in the race, and that's what keeps it as close in as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. And as always, no spoilers in the chats if you please, because we want to keep this absolutely unknown all the way to the finish line. As for our schedule for today, times in British summertime, that's BST, or Alternative Universal Coordinate Time +1. The UK time zone, of course, switching back later on today, back to the original GMT or UTC, so therefore we'll be talking about those in the future. As we can see, in just over 5 minutes' time, we're making our way to the grid for our 50-minute feature race to conclude the first half of the championship, and goodness me, what a championship has been so far. And let's give you a quick recap before we go racing. Because, of course, as we can see, we're now at the very end of the MPRL Cup. We started off on the 1st of October at Montreal, the hybrid street circuit, before giving way to a much more open racing circuit in Portugal at the Portimao circuit in round number 2. And in round number 3, it was Road Atlanta that welcomed our drivers last time out at a rollercoaster ride of road racing. And at the very front of the field there, we got to see an absolutely extensive battle between Jaden Callaway and many of his peers, but none more so than Justin Braggan, with the two of them going back-to-back in terms of their batting all the way through. But Callaway was able to make it back-to-back wins following his victories at Portimao, whereas Jason Landry, meanwhile, had to settle for what was a finish a bit further behind. Meanwhile, in the AM class, well, we were wondering whether Shahi Zahir would be able to make it 3 in a row, but Blake Phillips said, hold on a second, Shahi, you're not going to do so, because in the end, Blake Phillips, despite incredible pressure from his Sri Lankan rival, was able to hold on and take his first win of the season. And should he make a comeback even further today and take another win, they could be dead level on points, and it will come down to race times come the end as to who will be taking home the AM Cup crown. But beyond this half of the season, of course, next time out we'll have a mid-season break, and we will return on the 5th of November to kick off the middle of the pack Cup, which will begin at Motorland Aragon in Spain. And what a circuit we have in store there for Porsche Cup racing. But in terms of our standings then, let's give you a quick look at them before we do start to make our way to circuit side again. And as we can see in the Pro Drivers' Championship, and this is how the points stand both overall and in the Cup, Jason Landry leads on 135 points over the 106 of Jaden Callaway. And in theory, caveat it, register the trademark, in theory, Jason Landry should take this. However, if he misses this round, albeit he is here currently, so therefore we are expecting to go racing, but should he have a technical failure of any description, or just a nightmare day at the office, Jaden Callaway could mathematically steal this back. The same applies to Matt Best, to Julian Jones, James Logsdon, and Daniel McConnell and Tom Bryce, but it really is Jaden Callaway right now who's got to have some lady luck on his side and try to get the biggest possible result at the expense of Jason Landry having the worst possible result if he wants to prevent the Sunday GT Turtles driver from taking this cup and with it bowing out in his middle of the pack racing league career for at least an extensive period of time on the ultimate high. Because unfortunately, after this round, we will not be seeing Jason Landry on the grid for the remainder of the season and potentially not going into 2026 due to a change in personal circumstances. Nothing terrible, ladies and gentlemen, we should point out. But I do believe that Jason's chasing another opportunity in his real-life working career, and unfortunately that does come at the expense of his ability to go racing on what will be Wednesday evenings for everybody, live when they do go racing, and therefore for the Sunday GT Turtles driver, this is going to feel as though he'll want to bow on the ultimate high, and I can imagine as much as Callaway would love to see Landry do the same, indeed, I would say Jason Landry's become a bit of what would be a Jason Plato to this grid over his extensive career in the Middle Pack Racing League. Well, understandably, he wants to also try and take that crown away from the man who's trying to walk away with it and never have to hand it back to somebody. But we can see outside the top two, Matt Best right now in third place. He wasn't on the grid last time out, was the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver, so he'll be hoping to try and get a bit closer to Callaway before all is said and done. But he's ahead of Julian Jones by the best part of 11 points. Well, in fact, 9 points there when I can do the maths correctly. And then James Logston's a further 8 behind, 3 ahead of Daniel McConnell. And Tom Bryce rounds off your top 7 2 further field with David Adeyeye and Justin Braggon in 8th for 9th. Then coming on to the AM class, and here we can see how close it is between Shahi Zahair and Blake Phillips. 3 points is the delta between the two drivers, and Phillips right now, all he needs to do is take a victory today and make sure he's ahead of Zahair, and in the process he will level the score or get very close to doing so, but it will be razor sharp, and should they be even on score, with the fact as well that both drivers will have taken up what would have been 2 wins and 2 second places, it's then going to come down to margins in terms of race victory times that will settle the difference between the two of them in terms of who takes the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup. Glenn Bratton, meanwhile, he sits in third on 107 points, only 6 ahead of Billman DaCosta as their fight for third place intensifies, and understanding Bratton would love an opportunity to try and take the win for himself to get close to Phillips and Zahair, and DaCosta, well, he's been proving resilient so far, and he'll be hoping he can take a strike at Bratton. It's then Mark Senegal in 5th place on 74 points, 3 ahead of Aaron Lahr, and we do have Jermaine Warren and Nick Bader completing the championship standings. But going to our circuit then, where's the Grand Prix layout, the one and only layout available of the Long Beach Street Circuit, located in downtown Long Beach in the Los Angeles County of the US state of California. Well, this circuit, particularly if you are of a North American persuasion, but around the world it's become a more popular circuit. And indeed, if you wound back the clock to the best part of the 1970s and 1980s, you'll remember Formula 1 going racing here amongst other guises. But the one thing about this circuit, as the iRacing.com circuit map states, and indeed a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their simulator, but also the fantastic track maps that come with it, is that this is a circuit that is absolutely tight, and all these corners require some very late apex approaches, but they are also very narrow at the apex. But the offset, of course, is you do have 2 long straights with which to try and make your overtakes. So around here, our drivers will need to make sure they stay as close as their rivals through the corners, particularly when they make the way past the fountain at turns 2 and 3, should they be able to go on the offence. And if anybody tries to go for a move at turn number 11, the final hairpin, well, they're definitely going to have been swallowing a lot of bravery pills, because through turn number 11, even these Porsche Cup cars, you don't normally go too wide, because otherwise the car on the outside probably is not going to make the apex. It's going to find the tyre barrier on the other side, but we'll wait and see whether anyone's brave enough to try. It is possible, but you've got to take a very unique approach, typically a cutback move. But as for our rules and regulations before we go racing, because this is a feature race round, it's a slightly different set of rules today. The same thing that stays the same is that the setups there are still a fixed setup as provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League, and fuel loads have still been restricted to 40%. The feature race, however, we'll see the grid order shall be a class reverse grid based on the latest Drivers' Championship standings. So what that means is the pros will start ahead of the AMs, and we will flip the championship stands in each class to set the grid order. So you can imagine, in Pro, for example, Jason Lange will be starting right at the back. And because we do have a newcomer on the grid today, albeit he's not new to Middle of the Pack Racing League, he's a fresh face just to this series, that is Edwin Onofre. It's good to see the American back on the grid once again. Well, he's going to be starting behind Lange, because otherwise he would get an unfair advantage, having not competed up to this point. And that's how we'll see them organised. Meanwhile, we'll be Tom Bryce, who starts on pole, overall in the Pro class, and then we'll come to the AMs, who sit behind them. And I do believe in terms of the AMs, it's going to be Nick Bader on pole with the inversion of the championship standings, and at the very back of the field is going to be Shahi Zahair in the close company of Blake Phillips. The race shall start by a standing start, as is the tradition of what is Porsche Cup Racing and has been for this series so far, and each driver has 2 fast repairs available, and should they receive 15 or more instant points, they will be awarded with a drive-through penalty. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's head back to circuit side, and indeed everyone right now absolutely itching to go racing. They're not too far away, as we do see the practice clock tick on down. There is only 30 seconds left to go. The fastest driver, well, it's the man who's making his debut in this series today, Edwin Onofre. He's here right now as he just makes his way out the pit lane. I presume that might be in a little bit of trepidation or a bit of nerves, but as Logsdon parks up there, the fastest AM driver is Shahi Zahir, it would seem, but only by what is 1.5 hundredths over Mark Senegal. So it's looking close there. Meanwhile, well, it does look as though Blake Phillips struggling a long way further down in 12th place. But that's practice. We're getting set for the race. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, for the final time for this first half of the season, it's time to head to the grid and see who is going to come away from Long Beach victorious, both in this race and in the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup. Here we go. So as our drivers make the way to the grid, unfortunately we can't walk you through a live gridding order, but we can talk you through how they all line up, and they will line up as follows. Starting off the pros then, with their inverted championship standings, we will see Jason Landry start towards the back, of course, but it will be Justin Braggon who lines up on pole position. Now, I do apologise for missing out Braggon and Adayi when I did a quick synopsis of where they'd all start, but it is Justin Braggon who starts on pole position in the pros, and he'll be joined on the front row of the grid by ITD West David Adayi. We then have on row number 2, it is going to be Tom Bryce and James Logsdon. They'll line up behind, and then we will have Matt Best and Jason Landry on row at number 3, and then that starting order is going to be completed by Edwin Offro, who starts the last of our pros in 7th place. Nick Bader, he'll begin this one all the way back in 8th. He will be your pole sitter for what will be the AM class there, given the fact he does have the lowest position currently in the AM Championship standings. And then you'll have joining him a bit further behind on row number 5, Jermaine Warren and Mark Senegal. We'll then have Glenn Bratton and Blake Phillips on the penultimate row of the grid. And then it will be Shahi Zahir and Billman DaCosta who round off your 14 drivers who get set ready to go for the racing here today. And Billman DaCosta falls into the same situation as Edwin Offre, and the fact he's yet to score any points this season, and therefore he'll be starting from the very back of the field. Although I say that, I believe that might be a little bit erroneous, unless I'm mistaken, because I do believe that Bill DaCosta has previously scored points, so I think that he has been relegated to the back for extenuating circumstances, but that is how they all line up. But as they all get set, ladies and gentlemen, well, for what will be the final time in this first half of the season, the lights go on, and, well, the engines rise, 9,000 RPM is where you launch from, and it's lights out, and away we go here for the final race of the first half of the season here at Long Beach, as Justin Braggon looks to get a good start, and they all charge away immediately as they head down towards turn number 1. It's a long run into that braking zone, and Matt Best there side by side looking to try and take lead as quickly as he can. He's had a monster launch as Best, and meanwhile James Logsdon side by side here with Landry, the 2 old rivals. Well, Landry does get ahead for a quick sneaky peek up the inside for return of 1, and that's exactly what he needs. He cues them all up into the fountain section, saying to Logsdon there is no way you're coming back past me. Blake Phillips meanwhile side by side runs slightly to the wall there, coming through the fountain. There was, they come through the right-hander at turn 3 up towards 4. Well, Zahir gets ahead immediately there. So Zahir making the charge exactly where he needed to and getting ahead of the man he needs to beat with the Le Pit Club Sim Racing drive. Now need to try and find a way back versus the ITD West 209. But in towards turns 5 and 6 they go through that double left-hander. We can see Warren, Bratton and DaCosta. They're all still there at the moment as they are double through. So all 14 drives through the opening few corners are absolutely safe and sound. Oh, I say that. Somebody's got it very wrong there. That is Tom Bryce going quite slow in Edwin and Offre. I think it's been swallowed up in all this as well, but Bryce has had a bit of a shunt to the wall there, coming out of what is turn number 8 into the stretch towards 9. And we're going to see Mark Senegal up the inside there of Bryce, and Bryce is falling like a bit of a proverbial stone at the moment. Things are not going quite right for him as they make the way through turn number 10, that long left-hander that sets up the braking zone in towards turn number 11. Big lock up there on the front brake for Mark Senegal, but he somehow avoids that. Car around, that's James Logsdon. Logsdon's had a spin on the exit of the hairpin. Was he aided or has he done that of his own volition? Well, either way, he's gone all around. He drops to the back of the field and to the front of the field. After one lap of racing, it's Matt Best still ahead of Justin Braggon, followed by David Adayi and Jason Landry. 4 seconds behind, it's then Edwin Offro starting to pick up the pace, with Nick Bader, your AM leader, currently ahead of Mark Senegal, and Shahi Zahir's in 8th. Tom Bryce is 9th. Blake Phillips rounds off your top 10, and it's Glenn Bratton in 11th place, followed by Billman DaCosta and Jermaine Warren, with James Logsdon having to go into the pit lane, I suspect, for damage picked up on the car. So therefore, things have gone wrong for Logsdon, but they're going right for other drivers here. as we adventure on to lap number 2, and now the racing really starts to settle down at this point. Everyone will start to condense together into smaller packs, and this is where it's going to be the more knife fighting race at this point. But saying that, oh, hold up a second, who's had it go round there? I think Justin Braggon's had an error. He has, in the very colourful livery machine, where it does seem as though there Braggon's had a run round as he tries to get the car back together. I'm not quite sure how he's ended up getting it wrong, but we've seen the aftermath, which is he's dropped all the way down from what was second place all the way back to fourth place, and Edwin Offer is now only 1.3 seconds behind. Win towards that braking zone he comes for turn number 9, and now he's got to try and get it back together very quickly as Edwin Offret and Nick Bader, well, they are getting closer. Bader under pressure from Senegal here, albeit the Sunday GT Turtles driver, I think very cognizant of the fact he doesn't need to try and force a move early. As hold up a second, that was Phillips and Bratton getting a bit close, and Bill across to try and do the same here versus Bratton as he comes out. In fact, that was Phillips on the back of Bryce there, just to correct who we were talking about. James Logsdon is leaving the pit lane, so he's had that quick flip to the pits, and I believe he may not have used a fast repair for the damage he's picked up, so he's decided to save that repair, and he spent an extensive amount of time stationary, but the repair work's been done. The only problem for James Logsdon at this point is he is going to be effectively a lap down, as I believe that was a car into the barrier there. Yes, it was. Shahi's hair went a bit too long in the tooth, in towards the tyre barrier. He's scraped the car down the side of it. You can see the missing paint, and the 209 driver now, as he brings it back together, is that front right suspension damage? Is it handling damage? The answer is probably yes and yes, and therefore he's got to try and tiptoe this car around, but does it compromise his strategy? Now, strategy here, of course, will be interesting, as what's also interesting is David Eddie's had a go-round, coming out to turn 6, 7, and up towards 8, or should we say down towards it. The car's gone around, and, well, we do believe there's been a penalty for James Logsdon for speeding in the pits, as Justin Braggon has sped his way to a barrier there, coming out of turn number 8, just about gets it turned back in the right direction, but that's got to be a car that's had definitely a nasty knock, and Glenn Bratton will squeeze on through there. Shahi's ahead, meanwhile still under pressure from Blake Phillips. It's all happening on lap number 3 here, and right now we are really building up, and we're not even 5 minutes into the race. And as Zahir and Phillips are still running together, well, will there be an opportunity for Phillips to try and get a move done? Couldn't quite get it done then and there, but he's definitely mounted the pressure on as we ride on board with your 4th place AM driver, 9th overall. Now, putting this pressure on early as ahead does work to his advantage, because the idea here is at a street circuit is if you can't make the moves, you want to be absolutely over the back of your rival. You've got to put that mental pressure on. The only problem with that mental pressure you try to exert is you've got to drive very hard, and that's right up the inside there. That's the little cheeky from Blake Phillips. What that's essentially saying is, right, I'm going to stick my nose in. You better be ready to see me coming. I can't make the move, but I can make you step aside for me. And, well, in the end, Zahir saying to Blake, okay, you know what, I'll humour it, but I'm not going to give you the place up. So the two drivers in the end working it out together, but Blake Phillips definitely getting close. I wouldn't be surprised if he also is perhaps caught out by a little bit of overspeed there as he made his way down the start for this straight and had to tuck to the inside to try and say to Shahi, look, I'm going to go deep by accident, but if you give me the space, we'll be able to make it out of this one together, because otherwise he would have had to cut across the pit exit line there, and, well, that can lead to a penalty if he gets it wrong. Or alternatively, he goes too deep, he'll end up going down the escape road, which you'll see him then have to do a 180-degree reversal in order to get the car back on the circuit, which Blake, understandably, does not want to do. But Carr gets it wrong in front, and that is Tom Bryce, and Phillips squeezes on through as well, and the ITD West drivers right now dropping as Phillips almost drops it there through turn number 10 in towards 11, has to run out wide because of Bryce rejoining. Not that Bryce has done anything wrong, but Phillips being very conservative there, and, well, they managed to survive it, but goodness me, there have been some hairy laps, and that's before we consider all the things we've missed when it comes to this broadcast. And, well, the good news is we're going to be coming back in time, ladies and gentlemen, because we need to get some replays of some moments from earlier on. And without further ado, let's take a trip back in time and see what exactly happened on those opening laps. So this was back to the race start, and in particular we're going to focus on Matt Best here, who you'll see starts on the 3rd row of the grid, but watch Best launch there in the Texas Speed Sim racing car. Launches it, no wheel spin whatsoever, and just goes around the outside of 3 drivers before they've even got up to 2nd gear. Well, that is impressive from Best, and unfortunately I don't think he could get the move done on Braggon in towards turn number 1. He went for it, and in the end, in fact, yes, he did get it, did Best, for that moment. So Braggon managed to find a way back past him a little bit later on, but Best absolutely went all in there and delivered an outstanding run. A bit further back, we did have this side by side between Zahir and Phillips, too wide for the fountain, it's possible, and in the end Phillips being slightly squeezed to the wall, but he had enough room to breathe, but understandably he backed off the throttle, as we do have a slight graphical error there, but that seems to have calmed down. We do apologise for that, but as all drivers make their way up to speed, well, then we take a look at what happened to James Logsdon in the opening lap. And this was Logsdon at the hairpin. So at the very end of the lap, what exactly went wrong for James Logsdon? And the answer is got the power down, and the rear of the car just said no. So James Logsdon having a bit of a spin there, not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever, and then into the pits, and subsequently a speeding penalty for what was in the pit lane. So his race has gone from good to bad to nightmare. Justin Braggan, this was on lap number 2, and he at the time was chasing down Best. Oh, how did he manage to find a way into the situation? Well, we know how that happened, but in the end he had a spin, and this saw him go to the barrier. A slight slip to the right. The rear right suspension will have taken that impact okay, most likely, but it won't be in the best state, and that's what happened to him. We had this then, a little bit later on lap number 2, for Billman da Costa. As Glenn Bratton went up the inside of him, da Costa went in towards turn number 11. On to the brakes he went. Made his way through the corner absolutely fine. Ooh, goodness me, almost hit the tyre barrier there. And that's what we mean by too wide for the hairpin. When you go on that wider line, you've got very little room. But thankfully for da Costa, he managed to get the steering input in time. Otherwise, that would have been tantamount to disaster for both him and Jermaine Warren behind. Lap number 3, we had this for David Adeyiyi. This was at the same place that went wrong for Justin Braggan only a lap before. Through turn 6 and 7 he goes. Car bounced around and the rear just slid loose. Good evasive work there for Jason Landry, somehow finding some space on the outside. And then subsequently we did have a bit of a moment for Justin Braggan. This was at turn number 8. The cameraman managed to pick it up and just slid loose there as he tried to get the power down, and a small tap to the barrier. Well, for Justin Braggan, that would have been gut-wrenching for him because he did so well to avoid what was going on in front of him, only to become the scene of his own incident. And then this was on lap number 4 for Billman da Costa. Already going backwards, and in the end going even more backwards, unfortunately, as he went forwards a bit too much into turn number 1. And well, thankfully didn't go to the tyre barrier, but had to reverse it back onto the circuit. So that's all your big moments, ladies and gentlemen, from the opening 4 laps. Now we head back to your live racing. So as we come back to your live racing action, still plenty of racing to come before all this race is said and done. And we still do have 41 minutes left on the clock. But right now, Matt Best in control of this one, ahead of Jason Landry by 1.4 seconds. But Landry is definitely trying to pump in the lap times here to bring them down a lot closer to each other. Edwin Offred, meanwhile 4 seconds behind. The number 99 driver here in the Plaid machine, as he roars his way on through. Indeed, it wouldn't be an Edwin Offred car if it didn't have some sentimental level of Plaid on it. And we're coming on through at turn number 11. I do wonder whether that is in reference to perhaps Celtic or alternatively Scottish Plaid, because right now that livery is absolutely lovely to see on the car. And indeed, I am getting visions of some sort of Scottish heritage for Edwin Offred, even though he's based in the United States of America, from what I gather. As he heads up towards turn number 1, David Adeyiyi's a bit further back, and then you do come to your AM leader at the moment, which is Mark Senegal, but Shahi Zahair is only a second behind him, and Blake Phillips is there as well. So the AM lead battle is definitely getting closer and closer as we get deeper and deeper into the race. Oh my good lord, I look away for one moment to look at the timing tower, and Mark Senegal into the barrier there on the XL1, and well, there's Shahi Zahair coming up behind him, and Senegal at this point has got to be struggling with that big impact on the front right tyre. That suspension right now is not going to be pointed in a straight line. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got to come into the pits at the end of this lap due to damage to the car. But for Mark Senegal, that is an absolutely nasty knock, and Shahi Zahair wants to try and seize the opportunity as quickly as he can. But perhaps is he being a little bit impatient here? Zahair might be thinking to himself, well, I've got to get this done because Phillips is not too far behind. But is the reality, in fact, that maybe he doesn't want to rush to get this done, and it would be better if he just simply waited? Well, whatever it is, as a result now, Phillips is only 3 tenths behind, and Senegal is able to pull away to a degree through turn number 8. However, this is going to be the natural part of the concertina effect, as Zahair going defensive in the middle of the road there to say to Phillips, no, you don't. I am chasing down Senegal. You are not taking second place off of me. And once they make the way in towards the hairpin, we look back, and that is the concertina under braking, where Phillips getting nice and close. Senegal decides to stay out. He does not pull in, so he's surviving despite that nasty knock. And here comes Phillips then. 3 tenths they cross the timeline. How close could he get before turn number 1? Well, he's building rapidly so. And then down towards that braking zone where he's going to look to the outside. So here goes defensive here. Phillips tries to go all the way around the outside under braking. But in the end it'll be for naught. But you can see right now Blake Phillips definitely feeling the confidence is coming. And well, I think it's going to be a question of when, not if he'll try and go for another attempt on this place. He definitely wants it. He's got the bit between his teeth, and that's what we love to see. Now, before we started talking about all the drama and all the replays, what we were going to try and talk about was a bit of strategy here. What we have seen with the fuel loads that our drivers taken to each and every race so far in the sprint races, over a 35-minute sprint race, the fuel tank has normally lasted somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes. over a 50-minute race distance, we are expecting that fuel tank to still require only a single pit stop. We may mandate a second stop depending on how aggressive fuel usage is over the course of the race distance. However, it should be quite marginal with regards to needing a second stop versus a singular stop. So there is going to be a little bit of an element here, potentially around a small degree of fuel saving, as unfortunately James Logsdon has had to retire to this race. Or retire from this race, I should say, after everything going wrong on lap number 1, and subsequently what was the penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I think the team have decided, I think he's also got it wrong elsewhere on circuit, we haven't had a replay of that. I think they've decided enough's enough, and unfortunately for Bear Pope 0, they are now down to only one driver, and it will be this man. Bilman da Costa, who's currently last of the runners after his altercations earlier on, and right now he's trying to keep his head down and just push on as best as he possibly can, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to achieve over the distance. But as he makes his way through that right-hander, of course he's already had some difficulties, but he's yet to visit the pits. Indeed, many a driver is yet to visit the pits. But we're expecting this to be a one-stop race here. There is some fuel saving potentially involved to make that one stop feel comfortable, but we should not be expecting 2 stops unless a driver makes a major error and picks up damage, which would mandate that second stop. Anyone who is going to be on a 2-stop strategy, they're going to be losing an excessive amount of time, and it will cost them dearly. Marcelino right now, dearly would like the drivers behind him to go away, but they are not going away at any point at the moment. As we jump aboard Blake Phillips, there's a lot of oversteer there coming out of turn number 8. You'd expect it out of the Porsche Cup car. Rear engine, rear wheel drive. The rear leads the car around the corner rather than the front pulling it round. But the point being that Phillips right now driving on the limit and finding out those limits very quickly in terms of how far he can go before the car starts to slide loose on him. But towards the end of this lap, and it's going to be the end of a 10th tour of the circuit, well, wonderful to see them all following each other around here. They're all giving it everything, but this is the thing with street circuits. It really is the game of follow the leader, and it's about holding on and looking for those tiny little errors. And when those errors arrive, you have to seize them. If you don't, then you've got to try and find a way around the strategy. Otherwise, you may be sat here for the best part of 50 minutes. And racing that close for 50 minutes, it may not be the most entertaining from an outside perspective in terms of why they're not overtaking each other, but it is that constant thrill, that sensation. They're driving around the circuit where the width of the circuit is no greater at some points than 3 to 3.5 meters wide for what is the natural racing room. And then they've got to be within half a second, if not less, of each other to capitalise on mistakes, and staying that close is where all the skill comes in on the street circuit. On more open circuits, i.e. circuits such as Portimao earlier in the season, there is a skill to staying close, but of course there is a lot more room. You can go for moves, you can also have moments where you go off circuit, but right here, the only thing you'll find if you go off circuit is a barrier, or alternatively a tyre wall, which says to you, you need to turn the car around and get back on the circuit, and that's why nobody wants to get it wrong here in downtown Long Beach whatsoever. And Mark Senegal at the front of this group, he's shown no signs of getting things wrong, at least at this time. But he did have that mistake earlier, and you can see the damage on the right-hand side of the car. It's not minuscule, the damage. In fact, it has peeled the entire front right wheel arch behind the tyre, but somehow the suspension has held it together. I think the bodywork has taken the majority of the brunt, and right now that is why he's still holding on to the AM lead, because he's been able to manage the damage on the car, and I suspect when he comes into the pits, the fast repair will go on in, plus also the fuel, and therefore he'll feel confident to get it to the end of the race. Jermaine Warren's into the pit lane. This is most likely for his scheduled stop, so he's decided to come in quite early here to try and get this done and dusted as he makes his way on down pit road. Nick Bader will take the place off of him in the wonderful light blue machine with its black bonnet. And we're heading around right now. Nick Bader definitely has not been on the pace today so far, but he's trying to push onwards as best he possibly can, and we have seen some incredible performances from Nick over the last couple of years in AM classes of series, and indeed he has been up there as one of the big contenders in previous series, including the Radicals for the example, and also the Toyota GR86 Winter Series. But here today at least things are not quite coming together like you'd like, but of course these Porsche Cup cars are a very different beast. But back to the front of the field, here is your pro and overall leader of Matt Best, and right now he is ahead of Jason Landry, with Landry 1.6 seconds behind. Gap, well, last lap 22.1 for Best, a 21.9 for Landry, and this time a 21.9 for Best, a 21.7 for Jason Landry. The message that Jason Landry is sending is, I'm coming for you, Matt. And right now, well, Jason Landry is not going to leave anything up to interpretation. If he can, he wants to take this win. He does not want to finish second behind Best. He would like to walk away with a win in his hands, as well as the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup, albeit the man he's got to beat in order to guarantee that he's going to be taking home will be that cup. is none other than Jaden Callaway. And unfortunately, Jaden Callaway is not here today. So therefore, Jason Landry right now just needs to get to the finish, and he effectively will take the cut by default. Here we see Tom Bryce taking a quick peek up the inside of Glenn Bratton. Can't quite find the move into turn 1. But as they make the way through the fountain section, Bryce definitely trying to send a message sooner rather than later, which is he'd like to make a move here before Justin Braggan catches up to him. We have had an incident for Nick Bader off camera. We are going to get a replay of that in due course, because you're probably wondering where Bader has gone. He's dropped down the timing tower a little bit further, and Justin Braggan is now playing the catch-up game here to Bryce as they make the way towards turn 6 and 7. And right now, Bratton doing a very good job of just holding his ground, and the 4th place AM driver here showing no signs of wilting under the pressure. And that's where there's a difference between the AMs, who really are the rookies, versus the AMs who are improving. The fact that Bratton right now, much like any AM driver, has the right to fight a pro for overall position, because that's where the points are scored. But you can understand if some AM drivers would think, okay, I'll let the pros go, but not Glenn Bratton. He wants to try and make sure he holds on to this 8th place on the road for as long as he possibly can, and pick up some extra points with it. But with points to prove here, we come back to Shahi Zahair versus Blake Phillips. That's Mark Senegal right now under pressure at the front, but Phillips is getting a lot closer to Zahair. And as they go into the brains over turn and 1, Zahair has to go defensive. Phillips looking around the outside, lock up there on the brakes of Blake Phillips, and he goes on long, but he manages to power slide it to a stop there. Very well done from Blake Phillips to stop that from going too deep, as they need to reverse it around. Well, I don't know how on earth he did that, ladies and gentlemen, but that could have been close to tears, but not so. Blake Phillips realised he was locking up with the overspeed, and in the end taking evasive action, making sure not to collect Zahair, and more importantly Mark Senegal. But it's not over yet, because now Zahair's looking one way then the other. In towards 6 and 7 they go, but Mark Senegal beating him to the braking zone, but beats himself up on the brakes, and Shahi Zahair will sneak on through and take the lead of the AM class, and that might be the end of the battle for the time being, because Zahair now has been unleashed onto the circuit. He's got a clear track in front of him with 10 seconds to David Adeyeye, and can he now just run away with the AM victory, or can Senegal get back to him, or can Blake Phillips find a way to recover? Because Phillips was looking menacing, but that was of course when Zahair was caught up behind what was at Mark Senegal for several laps. We don't know what Zahair's clear air pace is yet versus Phillips is. We would imagine it's going to be similar, but has Blake Phillips got any extra in the tank here to try and close down what is a 6-second gap, and then find a move over the remaining half an hour of racing plus the final lap? Well, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. We will see. What we need to see in the meantime is a replay of some of the moments from only moments ago, including, of course, firstly what happened to Nick Bader. Now, this was on lap number 12 for Nick, as he made his way into the braking zone there for turn number 6. This corner has caught out 2 drives so far, and out of 7, he has caught him out again. So Nick Bader adds his name to the list of names, getting caught out at turn 6-7, the double left, and we're rolling around there and almost reversing into the wall at full force. And right now, back up to speed. We then had this epic moment from Blake Phillips versus Shahi Zahair. They were roaring their way past us down towards turn number 1, and one of the pit club sim racing driver on the brakes locks up here, carrying so much speed, has to take evasive action, and then power slides it sideways here to make sure not to have to go straight on, and then reverse the car out. And well, Blake Phillips doing everything in his power to go for that. It didn't quite work out, but what an attempt. We had this from Mark Senegal's perspective. We're looking back for the race leader in the AM class here when this happened. You see Zahair to go defensive. Phillips carried so much speed, and it broke, but unfortunately locked up there, I think, on the blue painted line for the pit lane exit, and I think that just caused the car to slightly slide a bit deeper than normal. That painted line not having as much grip as the tarmac, and then Mark Senegal was under absolutely huge pressure. We're going to stay on board with this rearward camera all the way through turns 4, 5 and into 6-7, because they had a monster launch coming out of turn number 5. Couldn't quite find the move because the Sunday GT Terrestrial drive blocked the middle of the road. Now under braking, Senegal just literally goaded himself into a mistake, locked up on that front left brake, and released Zahair to take the place off of him. And that's how they changed, and that's how we head back to your live racing. So as we come on back, then more to come, ladies and gentlemen, no doubt about it, as we look to Blake Phillips roaring his way on around. And well, we can also see a little bit further back, Justin Braggan swapping places with Bryce and also Bratton. They will just had a little bit of a shuffle there. We just caught the tail end of it. I think Bryce making the move on Braggan through 1 into 2. So therefore, Justin Braggan now falling back to 9th place. Glenn Bratton, however, has lost places to both of these drivers off camera. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get a replay of that. But as they all make the way up towards what will be the next braking zone, well, it does seem like the moment. Glenn Bratton now just settling back in for the ride, as we do say hello to Amalia Josanne in the Twitch chat there, and I hope you're doing well, Amalia. But as our drivers come through the right-hander. Well, Bragan definitely looking threatening versus Bryce. And I think very eager to try and go all in towards this next move. But is he going to be able to get close enough in due time? Not right now, but then again, he could try and work some magic in the pits. I think both drivers here right now hoping to get to their pit stop without the full process for them to get stuck into another battle with each other. But there could be just as much value in battling in the pit lane as there is battling on the tarmac, as we're nearing halfway. And was that going to be appeal to the pits for either one? No. Bryce just puts the car in the middle of the road and tries to break the distant toe. A little bit cheeky there of Bryce in the fact that he pulled the car quite gradually across. I think Justin might have been thinking to himself, so what is he doing exactly? Is he coming into the pits? Or is he just simply trying to break the toe? And in the end, Tom Bryce decided just to try and break the toe slightly on corner exit. And it works out. In fact, it positioned him quite nicely for his braking zone into turn number 1. And he now heads into the fountain. From them, car leaving the pit lane gradually. Here is Shahi Zahair. And, well, Mark Senegal has retaken the lead of the AM class. And Blake Phillips, well, of course, he's trying to recover and get a bit closer to Senegal. But since his spin, it does seem as though, right now, Mark Senegal is matching him for pace. So, therefore, the Pit Club Sim Racing driver, I wouldn't be surprised if that moment he had at turn number 1 has compromised his tyre life to a degree and his ability to deliver laps. But if he can get his head back into the game, he might be able to go on the attack. They also do say hello there to Anstis96 in the Twitch chat, or Nathan Anstis. Hope you're doing well, good sir. Well, Phillips right now doing everything in his power to try and recover this, but he's got a way to go here. Remember, he's got to beat Mark Senegal on the road, and then he's got to try and find a way to strategically get ahead of Shahi Zahair. If not, then it will be Shahi Zahair who is the AM leader when all the pit stops are done, based on all the maths we're assuming, and he's got to find a way past on the road here at Long Beach, which, as we've seen so far today, is much easier said than done. But whilst all that's happening, we have got some more changes of foot. Cars peeling into pits. Tom Bryce goes into the pit lane, as does Glenn Bratton. So they're serving the one and only pit stop for the day. Zahair, here he is, as he makes his way down in towards turn number 9, and he's looking very happy in the car at the moment, albeit 15 seconds stationary in the pit lane compared to other drivers with quite short pit stops by comparison, such as Bill Mendocosta, who unfortunately has retired from this race since his pit stop. So therefore we have lost both of the Bear Pope 0 drivers from this race. We are down to 12 runners now since 14 starters. But Zahair, well, he seems to be doing everything right at the moment to bring the AM title to him. But we've got to wait and see, because of course mistakes can still be made. We are only getting towards the halfway point as he passes Edwin Onofre, who is currently not around. I wonder if Onofre has had a technical issue and he's had to retire from the race, because we have lost Edwin Onofre, the privateer, who was looking to be quite a force to be reckoned with in the pro class today. And well, Onofre no longer with us at the moment. We'll keep you updated, but that might be a premature retirement. Maybe down to 11 cars now, and Onofre may have an issue with the car. They've had to bring the car back into the pits for. But looking back to the very front of the field, it's still Best ahead of Landry as he slides loose there coming out of turn number 5. Right now, it definitely seems as though Matt Best is the one giving it everything. Now, to be fair, a bit of history between these two drivers. You would imagine that for Matt Best, being ahead of Jason Landry is the equivalent of a David versus Goliath situation, if anybody follows the old tale. Because I think Matt Best, in a bit of a way, does see Jason Landry as a bit of a role model or an idol in the middle of the pack racing league, and Landry really has been one of those drivers to beat over the last 4.5 years. Matt Best joined the grid, if my memory serves me correctly, back in early 2023. I'm sure if he's listening right now, he'll be able to correct me and tell me exactly which series he joined the grid in. I think his first debut was in the original Winter GR86 Cup Series, where he did have a great performance there racing in the pro class. But as Best peels his way into the pit lane and Landry stays out, well, the one man he has always wanted to beat on circuit is the man who he has chased for so long, and it is Jason Landry. And right now, the Sunday GT Turtles driver stays out where Best comes in, but will the strategy be the right call for the Texas Speed Sim Racing driver of undercutting, or is overcutting, aka going long, the better strategy? Well, the time will tell, because we won't have long to find out. Fuel tanks are starting to run towards empty. Landry has done the best part now of 26 minutes on that opening fuel tank. It can't go much longer. I would imagine he will be into the pits at the end of this lap, because everybody else, excluding Mark Senegal, Justin Bragan and Blake Phillips, has pitted, but they are yet to come to the end of lap number 19, let alone 20, so therefore we would expect them to potentially peel on in. But coming on through right now for Blake Phillips, does he defect to the pit lane? The answer is no, he doesn't. He goes again, so he's been able to save the extra lap of fuel or two as well. If fuel saving, entirely possible, particularly at a street circuit, because of the fact it's so much follow the leader, and that can give you quite a bit of strategic advantage to try and do so. Although, I believe we've had a bit of a moment for Blake Phillips, and in fact we might be able to get a replay to explain what exactly has happened to him before this pit stop. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll take a quick look back in time. So this was lap number 19. He's by himself heading down towards turn number 1. What exactly happened to Blake Phillips under braking? Another small lock up there. So Phillips went straight on this time. So where he got caught out earlier on, went to escape out, unfortunately glided to the barrier. And, well, Phillips then had to try and get that car recovered and turned around. And that would have taken him an absolutely huge amount of time. Finally got the car back in the end, but that has cost him the opportunity, I suspect, unless Mark Senegal and Shahid Zahir make some major mistakes between now and the finish. I think that might have cost him the opportunity to chase down the win here today as we head back to live racing. So as he continues to make his way on around, albeit Pride slightly wounded at this point, and also knowing now he is going to need a bit of a miracle to try and bring home the AM Cup crown. Well, Phillips here looking absolutely and trying to chase back his composure, and Shahid Zahir looks fully composed. And here he is as Mark Senegal comes into the pit lane, and I would imagine that it's going to be Zahir who will retake the lead in the AM class, unless the ITT West drivers had a nightmare and we haven't seen it. Well, Mark Senegal has suddenly found the best part of a couple of seconds worth of pace over a couple of laps. Senegal's going to be one of the last of our AM drivers come into the pits. Phillips has yet to come in, interestingly. So has, I believe, Justin Braggan and also Jason Landry. So, in fact, these fuel tanks going a bit longer than anticipated. They may be going the best part of 30 minutes. Well, in fact, Jason Landry will put the cap on how long that fuel tank can go, because he comes into the pits at the end of a 21st lap. And well, Matt Best is the best part of 44 seconds behind him. That is how long it takes a pit stop around here. It is a very long time down the Long Beach start-finish straight, albeit you have plenty of time to admire the palm trees along the coastline. But the one thing you don't really admire is the palm trees. You want to be admiring the opportunity to take victory here, and also you don't want to get too much of an admiration for those concrete walls. They can't love you back, but they'll love to take your bumper. And as Best heads through towards the end of the lap, Landry leaving the pit lane. Can we get to the blimp camera potentially? Yes, we can. There goes Best then, and pit lane's below him on your screen, so we will see where is Best versus Landry. There he goes across the timeline. Landry's already obscured by the skyscraper there, the hotel, and in fact, there is Landry picking up speed. He's hit the exit. Best is a bit far behind, and as they come down in towards turn number 1, it's Jason Landry who has leapt ahead of Matt Best as a result of the pit stop strategy, and Best is right behind now, but the one thing he has in his advantage is he's got plenty of tyre temperature. Landry, meanwhile, has got to get his tyres back up to temperature. They won't have changed tyres. They would have stayed on the tyres they've started this race on. They can last 50 minutes, albeit you've got to preserve them quite a bit. And Best immediately knowing if he doesn't go for it now, when is he going to go for it? Because he won't have a bigger pace advantage than this. Landry needs a lap to get the heat back in the tyres. Best, he's got all the heat, and he's now got the fire in his chest in order to go on the offensive. But turn number 8, that's not where to do it. You want to get a good run out of here. And now in the tow, you want to be as close as possible. 2.5 temps, that's good. Equal machinery, of course. They are on the same setup. And as they head the way down towards turn number 9, will Best look for it to the inside. No, too far back here. He doesn't fancy his chances. The only other chance he's going to get then will be the exit of 11 to go on to another lap. Can he stay this close all the way in towards what will be at the start of the next lap and therefore go on the attack? Well, he's doing his best. He swings the car for a cutback, but a lot of oversteer there in corner exit. It costs him the launch, and as a result, the gap opens up to half a second. I think Landry now will feel as though that was an opportunity that Best has lost out on, and Landry can start to lead this all the way to the end. We've still got 19 minutes plus the final lap to go. It's not over yet, but Jason Landry seems now to be able to control this to a degree. Hold up a second, where's Landry gone? He's gone straight on as Landry. He's lost it coming into turn number 1. He's repeated what others have done, but not Matt Best, who survives it. And Landry, by outbraking himself there into turn number 1, I think he managed to avoid what was the barrier to a degree, but Landry has gone around, and as he's gone around, now Matt Best is 6 seconds clear. Landry is going to have to try and chase this back down then, and we'll get a replay of what exactly happened to him very shortly, but that was a surprise and completely out of nowhere. Jason Landry, the driver who normally, it's very rare he gets it wrong, he gets it so wrong on what is his final race in the middle of the pack racing league for him for some time, and I can tell you right now, the number 5 driver, he'll be kicking himself, but he'll also be picking himself up quite quickly. He's a very positive driver, he's got a very positive spirit about him, and he'll think, right, I've made a mistake, don't do it again, let's go hunting. Matt is not a slow driver. I need to be on my best here if I want to now close him down, and that's no pun meant about our leader's surname either way. But with that, we take a look back at what happened there to Jason Landry, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, with a quick replay. So this was heading down towards turn number 1. Best right behind him there, albeit not close enough for him to move. And under braking, Landry got the brakes on, went to turn in, and then just suddenly realised the car was not giving him enough. What was turning at that point, I think he realised he had a bit too much speed and decided to straighten out the wheel. We get the on board there from Jason Landry to give you an idea of what it was like. Just listen in. And realised at that point, I think his brain went into 2 different modes there. Part of him said, make the corner, you've broke it up. Another part went, hold up a second, something's not right. That's where you saw the very sudden downshift to second, then to first, because he realised if I try to go any further, I'm probably going to hit the outside wall. And, well, in speed terms, that's only probably about 2 to 3 miles an hour more than what he would normally take at that apex. But because the tyre barrier looms so large coming out of the corner on the exit, he didn't want to risk gliding into it. So Landry there played it safe, avoided any damage to the car, very quickly got it turned around. But goodness me, that was a complete surprise. No lockup whatsoever. He just simply didn't brake as much as he would normally do for the corner, and that's what called him out. Let's head back to your live racing. And as we come back, that's the onboard with Landry, and now as he makes his way through the hairpin, and he'll be hoping there's a lot more he can achieve before this one is all said and done. But of course, the gap to best, 5 seconds as they head on towards lap number 25. And David Addy 15.5 seconds behind right now, nowhere near close enough. And Landry trying to pump in the laps, and we're already 0.8 of a second faster on that one. That goes to show you he is going to try and bring this gap down as quickly as he can. At best, meanwhile, has a bit of a problem, because he's now finding just up the road from him, he's starting to encounter some traffic. He does have first up Edwin Onofre, and Onofre has not had the happiest set of laps recently. In fact, Onofre has dropped all the way to the back of the field. I believe there has been a bit of a moment for Onofre, and well, for best, he's going to have to try and pick his way past drivers first and foremost. Onofre may not be as much of a problem as this will be when you start to come up against groups of drivers, and you do have a three-way pack of AMs, all separated about 3 seconds from car to car. It'll be Bratton, Bader and Warren, but in the reverse order there of Warren, Bader, Bratton in terms of the order the best catches up to them. Now, good point there from Little Regret, or none other than Blake Phillips in the YouTube chat, saying so much carnage in the open laps. Indeed. I mean, Long Beach, no stranger to carnage when it comes to real life or simulated motorsport, and indeed street circuits, they go one of 2 ways. They either become processional or they're absolute chaos. But we've been able to find a nice balance here today. In fact, we've had chaos in the opening couple of laps, then a little bit of processional racing, and then we've had plenty more action as this race has gone on, and it's not over yet, I can assure you, in the fact that we do have still 15 minutes left on the clock here, and anything can happen before they do get to that checkered flag, and it normally does in motorsport. Jermaine Warren right now, all he's focusing on is chasing down Nick Bader for some extra points, and Bader trying to do the same versus this man, Glenn Bratton, who right now 10 seconds behind Blake Phillips. I don't think he's going to be close enough to challenge for the AM podium, but he'll want to be the right to be the best of the rest off of the AM podium, with Nick Bader closing in on him very gradually. You have to excuse me for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. I need to take a sip of water because, maybe I'll tell, I'm not feeling 100% at the moment, and I don't want to lose my voice. And as all our drivers continue to push into the distance at this point, they're also now into the zone whereby they pass the 35-minute mark, and what they know from the sprint races now will not be as valuable information. They will not have taken a set of tyres, typically, the best part of 50 minutes. They won't know exactly how the car handles and how tyre life goes away from them. That's not to say drivers won't have practiced. They will have brought themselves to the circuit before race day and done plenty of practice laps, but in a race setting, when there's that mental pressure on you, you've got somebody to chase in front or somebody chasing you from behind, that is where you truly find out what the car is capable of over the distance. And we have been seeing some sliding loose out the hairpin from both Bratton and Bader there on your pictures, so therefore that rear tyre life now starting to pinch quite hard. And in fact, Bader ferociously quick for the opening 3 corners. He is absolutely on the attack. And well, as he makes his way on through turns 4 and 5, right now for Nick Bader, it is all coming up strong again. Justin Braggan, meanwhile, well, he's had another moment at turn number 8. He can't seem to stop himself from going around at turn 8. We saw some smoke up in the background there. We will try and get a replay of that when we can, but the man who's running 4th in pro and 6th overall, well, suddenly Tom Bryce gets that little bit closer to him, and Braggan really not liking that right-hander. Indeed, it's a very odd one at turn number 8 because it looks like a traditional 90-degree right-hander. The only problem is it's not quite, as Braggan makes his way into the pit lane, and I wonder whether that's potentially for a drive-through penalty or repair work there. As Bryce goes on, we're not expecting 2 pit stops in drive state, only the 1 to take on the fuel needed to get to the end of the race. But I think Braggan's either picked up damage on his contact, alternatively, with that loss of control, he's been pushed over the 15 instant point count, and that will lead to that drive-through penalty that he has to serve. Being served within 3 laps. If he doesn't serve it, then it will be promoted, of course, to what would be a potential stop and hold, if not a race disqualification. But trying to figure the positives rather than negatives there of any potential disqualifications, all these drivers right now continue to give each other everything over the distance, no doubt about it. And well, oh goodness me, that's somebody going around in the rear of the picture. That is Blake Phillips getting it wrong. So Phillips once again being caught out here at Long Beach, and well, on his crusade to try and close up to Mark Senegal. The gap now from Phillips to Senegal will be 15 seconds, if not greater, and if anything, he's at risk of falling back towards Bratton and Bader. Suddenly, for Nick Bader in particular, this race takes a lot more significance, because if he can find a way past Bratton, who is proven to be a little bit obstinate, you'd imagine he'll feel as though this is an opportunity to go for a podium. And he looks around the outside here in towards turn number 8. He goes to the switchback and then realises why it doesn't work there if you're that far behind, because the problem is you break downhill. And turn number 8, where you want to get that nose tucked in nice and early, otherwise the camber change from going downhill into a flat corner sees the car understeer or naturally wide. Plus there's a lot of marbles that congregate on the outside exit, or the outside entry to exit at turn number 8. So therefore for Nick Bader right now, he's really experimenting with every inch of the road. He wants to find a way through, and to do so, he's having to get very crafty with it as he takes a very tight exit line there out of the final hairpin. And, well, 2.5 tenths is the gap. He's firmly in the toe, and he believes by taking these lines, he's going to gain the time in the toe. And, well, he's been proven correct at the moment, and he's got 11 minutes to go, and with that, approximately 11 laps to go as well. Onto the brakes they go. Bratton goes a little bit deep. Bader looks at the move there into the fountain. Can he go for it? Knows the answer. Bratton puts the car in the middle of the road and says, where are you going to go, Nick? And Bader says, well, I'm going to find a way through eventually as they come through turn number 4. Bratton right now under incredible pressure as he gets so close to the wall. Bader there just staying nice and tight, goes to the switchback out of 5. He's going to look to the outside into 6, 7 here. Bratton's going to go defensive on the left of your picture, and as they head to the brakes, will Bader go for the cut to the inside? No, he won't. Bratton will go slightly tight. Will he go deep? No is the answer. Bader lifts off the throttle now, heading over the horizon in towards turn number 8. Can he go all the way around the outside this time? He's going to try it again, but the marbles just pull the car slightly deep, and he has to get back into the toe immediately. Jermaine Warren is closing. Edwin Nofre is closing. Blake Phillips is pulling away with all this fighting, but it's a better run down the back stretch now for Nick Bader. Surely he's going to be up the inside into turn number 9. Yes, he is. Can he get it stopped in time? Yes, he can. Can he get the move done? Yes, he does. Nick Bader finally takes 4th place in the AM class and 8th on the overall road, but what a brilliant fight. Now Jermaine Warren gets into the queue here. Bit of a tap to the rear there of Bratton's car, but Warren there immediately backing off the throttle, not trying to power through it and send Bratton spinning on around. And as Bader comes towards us, what brilliant racing between those two, and I think we've got even more brilliant racing to come before all is said and done. The battle at the very front of the field may have come to a bit of a standstill, with everything not working out for Landry, but working out massively for Best at the moment. And in fact, Landry's had a couple of very poor laps as that. A poor turn 1 there for Glenn Bratton. Hits the barrier and carries on. But you can see there, Jermaine Warren with a small lock-up. He had to stamp on the brakes through the risk of tapping his rival in the rear. And Blake Phillips, meanwhile, sparks coming out the side of the car there. That's why he ground against the wall at turn number 4. So right now, Blake Phillips is absolutely trying to throw everything at this to run away, as is Nick Bader. And, well, Glenn Bratton, meanwhile, he is under so much pressure from Jermaine Warren, and Edwin Nofre is just watching and breathing down the neck of both AM drives here is the pro driver. I think Onofre is enjoying this moment, and indeed right now absolutely caught up in all the battling. But that's what's great, of course, about the middle of the pack racing league, is the fact that everyone fights a position. Oh, that's a bit odd, as there we had a bit of a moment for what was Jermaine Warren getting caught on the wall and getting caught on the back of Glenn Bratton's car. And Onofre goes up the inside of both of them there in towards turn number 9, and well, I think that was a bit of misanticipation there from Bratton, who firstly touched the wall, the car grounded on the wall, and then Warren got caught up as well and hit the wall. I think we've lost Jermaine Warren. We have. Warren's gone wrong all the way at turn number 9, and he's gone straight on as well, as we briefly see him there in the rear of the picture. Indeed, looking as though he's a bit of a Scooby-Doo character, making his way back and forth then, gradually coming towards us in the picture. If you ever remember, I'm thinking of the scenes where they're running from door to door in a mansion, albeit they start off very far away and then so the door's closer up. But Jermaine Warren right now definitely having a bit of a haunted moment there at turn number 9, brings him back together, but at what cost is the question, and the answer is he drops all the way down to 6th place in AM. But Glenn Bratton is into the pit lane. Now, is this a repair work on the car, or is it for a drive-through penalty due to instant points? We're not sure, but we are certain of is that Warren will get the place back. But what an interesting set of events, and we need to take a look back at those when we can, ladies and gentlemen, because my goodness, well, it definitely was a moment there where everything went sideways. As Justin Braggon has had to retire from this race due to an issue with the cars. We're now down to 11 runners, but let's take a quick look back at what exactly happened there between our drivers only moments ago. So this was Onofre, Phillips and Bryce, and in fact here was Edward Onofre making his way past Justin Braggon in the pit lane, and at the time the car making its way down pit row. I think that was the point where the team were already getting ready to retire the car. So Onofre on the charge, and then this was for Blake Phillips. So this was Phillips making his way through turn 4 into 5. He was trying to chase down Mark Senegal. Got it wrong at turn number 5, bounced off the apex curb, and the rear of the car just slid loose there, and he had to go for a complete 360-degree spin to get pointed back in the right direction. Then on lap 28, so a lap later from Phillips' spin, we had this for Tom Bryce down towards turn number 1, where exactly went wrong for the 72 driver, who was running 4th in pro at the time. The answer is he just went deep. Well, in fact, no, he didn't go deep. He took too much apex curb, and the rear of the car came round with him. So Bryce there on an unconventional mistake at turn 1, but surviving it. And then we had what was this for Edward Onofre, Jermaine Warren and Glenn Bratton. Now, Bratton's the man we're concerned about. Ooh, that explains it. That explains all. We did not see that for Onofre's on board. So Bratton went too quick into turn number 8, collected the tyre barrier on the left-hand side of the car. That straightened the car to the barrier, and then Jermaine Warren went straight into the back of him. He thought that Bratton would have a lot more speed than that. Can we get the on board from Warren in this? We can, and well, as he made his way through, in fact, we seem to have lost a little bit there, but that was essentially what went wrong for Jermaine Warren, in the fact that he just caught up to his rival a bit too quickly. And in fact, in front, that was Nick Bader passing what was Glenn Bratton, so our replay there catching it a bit of a lap earlier. And then there was this moment for Jermaine Warren after the fact. He's made his way through the corner. You'll see Bratton straight lines to the barrier, and Warren in the end gets too close and doesn't anticipate it in time, because he was on a very strong run out the corner. And that is the whole story between them all, as we now make our way back to your live racing. And as we do, we're looking for the car of Glenn Bratton at the moment, and then we come off of it, and we haven't long left in this race now. 5.5 minutes. Plenty of drama, still more to potentially come here before all is done at Long Beach, but all the way to the front of the field. Matt Best right now, well, he is only 5.5 minutes away from taking victory today, and indeed putting one over Jason Landry. The only thing is, it will not be enough to stop Jason Landry from provisionally taking the middle of the pack for Racing League Cup title for the first 4 rounds of this series. Meanwhile, Edward Onofre just makes his way around the outside of Nick Bader for what will be 8th place on the road, as our race leaders coming up to lap these two in due course. And Bader and Onofre there exchanging their differences immediately, and Bader not wanting to fight this one too hard. I think understandably prioritising just making it to the end of the race. We will see whether there's a change back later on. Bader may go racing if he finds on the final lap he's a lot closer right now, but we can see in that rear of the picture there is Best. And he does have a nice 6.8 second gap over Jason Landry, who then comes up behind here. And Landry right now, all we need to do is get to the finish, and he will take the Cup title in the Pro class. David Adeyemi, a bit of a lonely third place here, 13 seconds behind Landry, but in turn 17 seconds ahead of Shahi Zahair. And right now the ITD West driver, I think he'll feel a bit lonely out here, although he has some company of the 213 of Jermaine Warren that he'll put a lap on in due course with Shahi Zahair. Then his teammate for ITD West, the AM leader, who has dropped Mark Senegal to the best part of 8.6 seconds. And right now, if things were to finish as they currently stand, he would be your AM Cup champion for the MPRL Cup, and he would go into the mid-season break with an extended advantage. They'll be pushing to the best part of 10 points over Blake Phillips, and therefore he'll feel a little bit more confident going into the second half of the season that Phillips will definitely be the hunter, and he'll be the one who will need to be hunted down over the run of the distance. But something tells me that Zahair doesn't mind being the driver who's been hunted, and well, the way he's had to drive today has been on one shoe, the hunter, and immediately on the other shoe of the hunted, and he's absolutely put together a phenomenal run. But we'll wait to see what comes next between these drivers, and as he heads in towards that left-hander of turn 1 through 2, well, right now, definitely for Shahi Zahair, it all clicking together very nicely indeed. But from them, as they get ready then to see out the last couple of laps, well, we look a little bit further back to Mark Senegal. And right now, the Sunday GT Turtles driver here, keeping it all together, not really making any mistakes at this point. He's been absolutely faultless today, minus that one moment in the wall earlier on in the race, which some would say did scupper his opportunity to take the win. Others would say, well, no, because he was still maintaining very good pace despite that contact. And I would go with the latter opinion, to be honest. I think Zahair just had a slight edge here today that stopped Senegal from really being able to make a solid contest for the win. But at least for the opening 10 minutes, he held it in there as best he possibly can. But unfortunately, Zahair's pace just proving slightly too dominant with regards to the run. And then Blake Phillips, sadly, the best part of 27 seconds behind. Well, I think if it were not for his spins and mistakes, he would be right there with Zahair. But at this street circuit, Shahi Zahair has been the force to be reckoned with, and Phillips has got to regroup by the time we get back to the racing at Motorland Aragon in November. But out of turn 6 and 7 he comes, and right now we're just trying to see this race to conclusion. Indeed, all of our drivers are at this point, all trying to get to the finish. We have had a spin for David Adeyemi, I believe, at the hairpin. We won't be able to catch that on replay, unfortunately, but he does retain third place, but now he falls to 23 seconds over Jason Landry, and only 9 seconds ahead of Zahair. But it hasn't cost him too much time in reality, and therefore this third place looks absolutely set in stone for the number 32 driver. So we're seeing it out now, ladies and gentlemen. 2 minutes left on the clock, and we've got this lap plus potentially 2 more for Matt Best as we look to our leader for Texas Speed Sim Racing. And I can imagine his teammate Daniel McConnell, well, he would likely have been at circuit side cheering on Matt as they went racing. And right now for Best, it really is a race to be savoured. 2 more laps to come then, because he will cross that timeline with in excess of 1:30 left on the clock. So we will squeeze in a 36th and a 37th lap. But right now, Matt Best entirely in charge and looking to bring home another overall win. And he'll add this overall win to the one we did see earlier on in the season. Indeed, that was a hard-earned one, but this one's going to feel even more sweeter given the fact he's had to come through the field to make it happen. And he really has been the one driver here today at Long Beach, whereas everybody else has made a mistake of some description at some point. For Matt Best, he has been absolutely faultless. Looking from him then, coming to our drives a bit further back, here's Edwin Offred currently running in 8th place, and well, for a debut round for the series, not for his time at MPRL, you can understand if an Offred's gone for a bit of a trial by fire today, albeit this 8th place, I think he'll be pleased with it, but I think he'll know that if he wants to compete in the second half of the season, he's going to have to get his skates on a little bit and really build up that knowledge of the Porsche Cup machine. But then again, you are talking about your Pro LMP3 champion when we did run the Dentist Conference World Tour sponsored series in 2024, and he was an absolute monster in the LMP3 machine. Indeed, nobody can keep up to him in his Ligia P320 car, and right now, well, for an off-rare, a different machine, but he's very quickly getting acclimatised to it. But as they head towards the timeline, where it is a fine lap, in fact, we are not going to get an extra one in. The race has been called early, so Matt Best will head towards the timeline, and where it's going to be a victory on the road here today for Matt Best. But for Jason Landry, it's going to be a sweet sign-off with 2nd place, and we're at the middle of the pack for Racing the Cup crown in the Pro class. We will then have David Adeyemi head towards the timeline. He's got a little way to go, but he will take the final spot on the overall podium, and with it 3rd place in the Pro class as well. And indeed kept his head together for the most part, just didn't have the pace at the top 2, but he'll see that checker flag. And then we do have the best part of 8 seconds before we do get to the man in the rear of the picture. You can see him there for a brief moment. Here he comes, and he's your AM Cup champion for the middle of the pack Racing League Cup. It is Shahi Zahair who takes the AM win ahead of Mark Senegal has to settle in the end for 5th place on the road. But that 2nd place in AM is best result of the season so far. And then we'll have a bit of time before we get to the final finishers of this race, including Tom Bryce, who makes his way gently now through turns 9 and 10, knowing there's no risk of losing places. There's only a risk of getting it wrong right at the end. And as he heads through the hairpin here, take it nice and easy. He will be your full for your pro finishers, 6th overall as he heads towards that timeline. And then it will be just behind him to complete the AM podium for the Pit Club Sim Racing. Blake Phillips in 7th place, run up in the AM class in terms of 3rd place finish there. And well, I think a bit of frustration knowing it was his cup to potentially equalise and not take, but he couldn't quite make it happen here at Long Beach. As Edwin Offred, meanwhile, will be your last lead lap finisher with an 8th place. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well done to all our competitors, and in particular to Matt Best, who was absolutely spot on today. And I think his heart would have sunk a little bit when he saw Jason Landry came out in front of him following the pit stop, only then to go through the roof. And I think he might have jumped in his seat in joy when Landry went on at turn number 1. But as he makes his way down the start finish straight once again to celebrate, well, it's going to feel so nice to him because he knows that he's finally beaten the man that he has chased for years on this grid of Jason Landry. Albeit Landry will be the Cup champion, but for Matt Best, it will be the pride on the road that he takes away today. And Landry decides to sign things off with the donuts there. And well, we're going to keep the camera on him, ladies and gentlemen, because he has been an absolute superstar in all the years I've seen him race in the Middle of the Pack Racing League Series. And whilst he can't complete this full season, the fact that he has been on the grid for 4.5 years, day in, day out delivering. Well, if he does come back sooner rather than expected, we'd absolutely love to see it. But right now, he's enjoyed himself out there. He's enjoyed all 4 of the opening rounds of the season. And well, the car finally runs out of rear tyres and fuel. Also, he lets others join him in the donut parade. And well, as they all do, give it a spin to celebrate a win. Well, Shahi Zahair right there with them as well. And he's enjoying celebrating his AM win and with his AM Cup crown, subject to any stewards' inquiries. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, we take a look to the scenic view, and with that, let's take a look to those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. So after a fast-flying 50 minutes of racing in round 4 of 8 in the Middle of the Pack Racing League Fall Into Porsche Cup Championship for 2025, as brought to you on iRacing, the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, Matt Best, your overall winner for Texas Speed Sim Racing by 4 seconds in the end over Jason Landry for Sunday GT Turtles. And Best got the job done when he needed to most, and the simple way to do it was don't make a mistake. Landry, well, meanwhile, he took 2nd. In the end, it was in the lead come the end of the pit stops, only to go straight on at turn number 1 and have to turn things around, and that meant that all his lead became undone and he couldn't quite get it back, with David Addy 3rd place there for IT West Senior Vice Presidents. No real opportunity to contest the top 2, but in respect, he was also miles clear of the rest of the field. Next up was his teammate from ITT West Senior Vice President, your AM winner for today, and we're at your MPRL Cup AM Crownee, that is Shahi Zahair, by the best part of 10 seconds there over Mark Senegal, who was 5th and run up in the AM class for Sunday GT Turtles, his best result of the season. Well done to Mark. And then Tom Bryce was 6th for ITT West Interns Pro Esports Division. In a solid drive there, but a bit of a lonely one, but still bringing home some absolutely solid points. We did see in 7th place, meanwhile, where it was that finish in the end for Blake Phillips on the Pit Club Sim Racing, and we brought it on home in the end, did the 225 driver. All he had to do was try and get the car home after his mistakes early on, and he'll be asking himself what could have been if he hadn't made those errors. Could he have chased down the AM win and therefore forced the AM Cup to go to a tie break? Not quite in the end, unfortunately, and we'll always be guessing at what if with that one, and he will look to bounce back come Motown Aragon in 2 weeks' time. Edwin Offred there finished behind the 3rd of the AM drivers, but the Pro driver taking 8th, ahead of Jermaine Warren and Nick Bader, 4th and 5th in the AM class. They round off your top 10, both classified a lap down there to the race winner. It was also a lap down to Glenn Bratton, the last of your finishers of this race, who in the end could not quite hold off the intentions of Warren or Bader. And from Glenn Bratton, it was then the non-finishes for Justin Braggan and the Bear Pope Zero pair of Bill DaCosta and James Logston. So 14 starters, 11 finishers, of which 8 on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen. And that concludes our first half of the season for the Fall Into Porsche Cup Championship for 2025, as brought to you by the Middle of the Pack Racing League. And with that, of course, it does mean that we now need to talk a little bit about the championship standings. And well, we haven't quite got these standings available to bring you, ladies and gentlemen, but we can tell you, however, is who your provisional cup champions are after 4 rounds of racing, and here they are then. A big congratulations to, provisionally, our Cup winners are firstly Jason Landry in the Sunday GT Turtles machinery for the number 5. It's a Pro Class Cup that comes his way. And in the AM class for IT West Senior Vice Presidents, a big congratulations to Shahi Zahir in the 209. And in fact, I've just had it in, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have the standings to present to you on the screen. We'll present those at the start of the broadcast in 2 weeks' time for round number 5. But with regards to instant reports, we have not had any reports coming in. So the results are final from Long Beach, and these are your MPRL Cup winners. And of course, a special win there for Jason Landry, your Pro winner, given it will be the final time we see him on circuit for this season, and indeed in some time in the Middle of the Pack Racing League Series. But well done to them both. And for Shahi Zahir, can he make it 2 from 2 when we enter into the second half of the season? And he will, of course, go racing to look to try and make it 2 from 2 in the Middle of the Pack Cup. We will have to wait and see. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community and everything in between, we do recommend you check out firstly our official Discord, invite link available on screen there, and if you are looking for a friendly, welcoming but also professional space to join a sim racing community and go racing with like-minded individuals, you won't go far wrong if you join the Middle of the Pack Racing League Discord, because indeed, as you will have seen from the racing today, and indeed over the best part of 5 years of racing on the iRacing service, and also on other services such as Gran Turismo 7, you will not find a more friendly community of sim racers. But if you don't want to join the Discord, perhaps you're a little bit shy or more of a social media person, you can of course follow us on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements from the Middle of the Pack Racing League. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to a close the first chapter of the season in the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cup, and in 2 weeks' time, we will continue the story as we go racing again in the second of our cups, and with rounds 5 to 8 making it up, we'll begin it all with round number 5, and that will be at the Motorland Aragon circuit in Spain, where the corners will come thick and fast, the circuit is wide open, and overtaking opportunities as well as mistakes are likely to be aplenty. All the racing will occur on what will be Wednesday the 5th of November 2025, but you can come and join us as if it were live in our regular time slot on Saturday the 8th of November, and we will see you there. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.